Hello, this is the Goodly Christian Witch, and we are now going to read from the book 8 Sabbats for Witches. Janet and Stewart Farrar are the authors, and we're going to read about the Autumn Equinox that's coming up, and the Autumn Equinox happens to celebrate the beginning of autumn, of course, and the 21st of September is what is indicated here in this book, beginning on page 116, and this is chapter 9. Chapter 9, again, Autumn Equinox, 21st September. Just again to refresh, keep it fresh in your minds that we are reading from the book 8 Sabbats for Witches by the authors Janet and Stewart Farrar, and it is a book that is published by Phoenix Publishing, Inc., and the illustrations are also by Stewart Farrar, and the photographs by Ian David and Stewart Farrar. And this is 8 Sabbats for Witches and Rites for Birth, Marriage, and Death. Okay, so we are going to again go through this. It's not a very long chapter. It's pretty short, and of course, this is the illustration by Stewart Farrar. And again, it's page 116. Okay. So now, to get into the Autumn Equinox rites, first thing that we should do is take a bell and ring it, usually 3 times, in order to establish a sacred time, and a sacred space is established by having some kind of perimeter around you. And usually when you do a formal ritual, you would call the quarters. Some people call 4 archangels, and north, south, west, and east, and some people call in the elementals, that would be the salamanders for fire, and the sylphs for air, and the undines for water, and the gnomes for earth. Now that isn't in this book. I mean, I'm not saying those kind of things aren't in this book, but I'm just talking about that right now off the top of my head in order to sort of familiarize people with basic ritual. But this book goes into more complex ritual, and again, it's seasonal because there's 8 Sabbats that witches practice. Okay? So it begins, we're going to begin reading this chapter now. So again, chapter 9, Autumn Equinox, 21st September. The 2 equinoxes are, as we have pointed out, times of equilibrium. Day and night are matched, and the tide of the year flows steadily. But while the spring equinox manifests the equilibrium of an athlete poised for action, the autumn equinox's theme is that of rest after labor. The sun is about to enter the sign of Libra, the balance. In the stations of the goddess, the spring equinox represents initiation. The autumn equinox, repose. The harvest has been gathered in, both grain and fruit, yet the sun, though mellower and less fierce than he was, is still with us. With symbolic aptness, there is still a week to go before Michaelmas, the festival of Michael or Lucifer. So that's the festival of, this is an aside by me, either the archangel Michael or the angelic being known as Lucifer, which to the ancients were the same or similar being. Then I'm going back to the book. So I'll read the sentence again. With symbolic aptness, there is still a week to go before Michaelmas, the festival of Michael / Lucifer, archangel of fire and light, at which we must begin to say au revoir to his splendor. Doreen Valiente An ABC of Witchcraft is one of her books. They're citing this book. The Farrars are citing her book, An ABC of Witchcraft, on page 166, remarks that the most frequent spectral appearances of certain recurrent hauntings are March and September, quote, the months of the equinoxes, periods well known to occultists as being times of psychic stress, unquote. So that was the quote from An ABC of Witchcraft by Doreen Valiente on page 166 in the Farrars book. Continuing with the Farrars book, that would seem to contradict the idea of the equinoxes being times of balance. Yet, the paradox is only an apparent one. Times of balance, of suspended activity, are by their nature the times when the veil between the seen and the unseen is thin. They are also the seasons when human beings change gear to a different phase, and therefore times of psychological as well as psychic turbulence. That is all the more reason for us to recognize and understand the significance of those natural phases so that their turbulence exhilarates instead of distressing us. If we look at the tree calendar, which Robert Graves has shown to underlie so much of our Western magical and poetic symbolism, we find that the autumn equinox comes just before the end of the vine month and the beginning of the ivy month. Vine and ivy are the only two of the month trees which grow spirally, and the spiral, particularly the double spiral, winding and returning, is a universal symbol of reincarnation. And the bird of the autumn equinox is the swan, another symbol of the immortality of the soul, as is the wild goose, whose domestic variety is the traditional Michaelmas dish. Incidentally, blackberry is a frequent substitute for the vine in the symbolism of northern countries. Folk tradition in many places, particularly in the west of England, insist that blackberries should not be eaten after the end of September, which is also the end of the vine month, because they then become the property of the devil. Might we guess that this means, quote, don't try to cling to the incoming spiral once it is over. Look onward to the outgoing, unquote. Lugnasta marked the actual gathering of the grain harvest, but in its sacrificial aspect, the autumn equinox marks the completion of the harvest and thanksgiving for abundance, with the emphasis on the future return of that abundance. This equinox was a time of the Eleusinian mysteries, the greatest mysteries of ancient Greece, and although all the details are not known, initiates keep the secrets well. The rituals of Eleusis certainly base themselves on corn harvest symbolism. I'm going to turn back here to page 117 and look at this footnote, because we often find very important things in footnotes that are often not covered in other places. The footnote number 1 here says, in Ireland, on the other hand, the last day for gathering blackberries is Samhain Eve. After that, the puka, see page 122, quote, spits on them, unquote. Hence one of his names, Puka na Smear, the blackberry sprite. So apparently what the book is saying is that it's some kind of a blackberry fairy or sprite or spirit, yeah? Okay. Now continuing, the climax is said to have been the showing to the initiate of a single ear of grain with the admonition, quote, in silence is the seed of wisdom gained, unquote. For our own autumn Sabbat, when we take the following irrelated themes, the completion of the harvest, a salute to the waning power of the sun, and an acknowledgement that sun and harvest and men and women also share in the universal rhythm of rebirth and reincarnation. As the Book of Shadows declamation says, quote, "Therefore the wise ones weep not, but rejoice," unquote. In the Book of Shadows, ritual for this festival, the only substantial items are the High Priestess's declamation, quote, "Farewell, O sun," unquote, and the candle game, both of which we have retained. The preparation. On the altar is a dish containing a single ear of wheat or other cereal crop covered by a cloth. The altar and circle are decorated with pine cones, grain, acorns, red poppies, symbol of the corn goddess Demeter, and other autumnal flowers, fruit, and leaves. The ritual. After the witches rune, the coven arrange themselves round the perimeter of the circle facing inwards. The maiden fetches the covered dish from the altar, places it in the center of the circle, leaving it covered, and returns to her place. The high priestess says, quote, "Now is the time of balance, when day and night face each other as equals. Yet at this season the night is waxing and the day is waning, for nothing ever remains without change in the tides of earth and sky. Know and remember that whatsoever rises must also set, and whatsoever sets must also rise. In token of which, let us dance the dance of going and returning," unquote. With the high priestess and high priest leading, the coven dance slowly, widdershins, hand in hand, but not closing the ring, head to tail. An aside by me, the goodly Christian witch, is that widdershins means counterclockwise in Wiccan and witchcraft practices. Okay, continuing now with the book, on page 119. Gradually the high priestess leads inwards in a spiral until the coven are close to the center. When she is ready, the high priestess halts and instructs everyone to sit in a tight ring about the covered dish facing inwards. The high priestess says, quote, "Behold the mystery. In silence is the seed of wisdom gained," unquote. She then takes the cloth from the dish, revealing the ear of grain. All contemplate the ear of grain for a while in silence. It says here to see plate 14. When she is ready, the high priestess rises and goes to the east candle. The high priest rises and goes to the west candle, and they face each other across the seated coven. The high priestess declaims, quote, "Farewell, O sun, ever returning light, the hidden God, who ever yet remains. He now departs the land of youth, through the gates of death, to dwell enthroned, the judge of gods and men, the horned leader of the hosts of air. Yet as he stands unseen without the circle, so dwelleth he within the secret seed, the seed of new reaped grain, the seed of flesh, hidden in earth, the marvelous seed of the stars. In him is life, and life is the light of man, that which was never born and never dies. Therefore the wise ones weep not, but rejoice," unquote. The high priestess raises both hands high in blessing to the high priest, who responds with the same gesture. The high priestess and high priest rejoin the coven, who now stand, and lead them in a slow dance deosil, gradually spiraling outwards towards the perimeter of the circle. When she judges that the spiral movement has been sufficiently emphasized, the high priestess closes the ring by taking the hand of the last witch in the chain and speeds up the pace till the coven are fast and joyously, or circling fast and joyously. Now I'm going to read this footnote here, footnote number 2 on page 119, written by Doreen Valiente. In Ireland, instead of, quote, "to the land of youth," unquote, we say, quote, "to Tir na Nog," pronounced Tir nu Nog, which means literally the same thing, but has powerful legendary associations. A Celtic Elysium visualized as a magical island off the west coast of Ireland, quote, where happiness can be had for a penny, unquote. And now we're going to continue with page 120, and you see this is a very short chapter. So the last sentence that we read, before reading the footnote, the second footnote, when she judges that the spiral movement has been sufficiently emphasized, the high priestess closes the ring by taking the hand of the last witch in the chain and speeds up the pace till the coven are circling fast and joyously. After a while she cries, "Down," and everybody sits. The maiden replaces the dish with the ear of grain on the altar and the cloth which covered it beside the altar. The great rite is now enacted, followed by the wine and cakes. After the wine and cakes comes the candle game, as described on page 71 for Imbolc, and that should put everyone in the right frame of mind for the party stage. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, before I sort of ring the bell and close this sacred time, we're going to take a look at not only the candle game as described on page 71, but we're also going to take a look at plate number, I believe it was plate number 14, yes, that they had recommended that we look at. So we're going to take a look at that. And just before we do, I want to say that, and we're not closing the circle yet. Before we do, I want to say that, of course, we have some crystals here and sacred gems and stones. And we also have the statue of a fairy angel, also a little angel playing a flute, Mother Mary represent the goddess, and Jesus to represent the God. And now we're going to take a look at some of these other items in the book as instructed. All right, now we're going to go ahead and take a look in this book, 8 Sabbats for Witches by Janet and Stewart Farrar. We're going to take a look at plate number 14 as we were instructed regarding the Autumn Equinox ceremony. They said to take a look at it. This is page 14. I'm sorry, it's not page 14, it's plate 14. It's the 14th picture, the plate, regarding the photographs, okay? Plate 14 below here, it's this one, where we have a woman facing in towards this plate with it looks like a stalk of wheat on it. It's a gentleman here and another gentleman here. They're all facing inwards looking at this plate of wheat, okay? And that's, again, for the Autumn Equinox. It says, plate number 14 below here, Autumn Equinox, quote, behold the mystery, unquote. So this is a very informative and lovely book. It's very spiritual and very beautiful. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look, as they said that there was a game called the Candle Game under the chapter that had to do with Imbolc. Imbolc's in February. It has to do when milk goes into the ewes, the animals they use when the milk first starts coming in. On page 71, they mention it says Imbolc, 2nd of February here. Some people celebrate Imbolc on the 1st, some on the 2nd. But anyway, the candle game is here. So we're going to read about the candle game, okay? Just this one portion that they want us to utilize for the Autumn Equinox. After the cakes and wine, a suitable game for Imbolc is the candle game. And again, also for Autumn Equinox, that's my aside. Okay, continuing. The men sit in a ring facing inwards, close enough to reach each other, and the women stand behind them. The men pass a lighted candle deosil from hand to hand, while the women, without stepping inside the ring of men, lean forward and try to blow it out. When a woman succeeds, she gives 3 flicks of the scourge to the man who was holding it at the time, and he gives her the 5-fold kiss in return. The candle is then relit and the game continues. So that's just that candle game that you can then do after the cakes and wine, according to the book and according to the portion on Imbolc. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to close our circle. Technically, I could have, when I began, since this direction here here is north. Here is north. No, I'm sorry. In this house, this would be north. This would be north. This would be west. This would be south, and that would be east. So in the beginning, what we would have done, going in a clockwise manner, is we would have, well, whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise, deals or Widdershins, that some people differ on that. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And a celebratory circle is different from a magical circle. Sometimes in a celebratory circle, everybody always goes Deosil to open it and close. But there's different thoughts on that. So let me just say, for this one, we'll undo the circle. When we came in, what we might have done is called in starting in the east, because I was taught to start in the east because I was in the Golden Dawn for a while, one of the branches of the Golden Dawn. But before that, I was initiated as a third-degree Wiccan in a Wiccan group long before I was in the Golden Dawn. So, anyway, continuing is that in opening, I would have called in to the east, and I would have gone around. What I used to do actually is I used to. Well, again, it was different. It was a magical circle, but for a celebratory circle, I would go clockwise or Deosil to open it, and then counterclockwise or Widdershins to close the circle. It was a magical circle. I would sometimes dematerialize reality by going counterclockwise once the circle was called, inside the ritual. And then I'd go clockwise or Deosil in order to set the ritual or fix it. But anyway, that's a little more technical than we're going to get into at this moment. But we would have gone in a sort of a Deosil, would have called the sylphs of air in the east, and the salamanders of fire in the south, and the undines of water in the west, and the gnomes of earth in the north, and would have completed the circle, would have drawn 5 pentagrams in the air, invoking pentagrams, and then with a ritual dagger or a ritual wand. And then in order to close the circle, one could use a ritual dagger or a ritual wand. And you can go Widdershins or counterclockwise, sort of break the circle open. You don't have to do that. You can go clockwise if you want to. It depends on what you're trying. If you're trying to accomplish building a strong circle, you might always want to go clockwise until you build your strong circle. But again, that's a little bit too much information for this moment. But I'll just close this circle by going Widdershins or counterclockwise, and I'll start in the north. I'll address the gnomes of earth in the north. These are earth coordinates, not celestial coordinates, earth coordinates. Okay? So to the gnomes of earth in the north, and to the undines of water in the west, and to the salamanders of fire in the south, and to the sylphs of air in the east, I say to these elementals, to all of you, thank you for joining us and being in our sacred circle. Stay if you can, go if you must. I'm closing this circle. Blessed be. And we'll ring the bell 3 times to close our sacred time. All right. And we'll say, blessed be. And I think it was Mary meet, Mary part, Mary meet again. Blessed be. This is the Goodly Christian Witch.